Julia Alexander, and as I stated, we are interviewing a series of candidates that's running for Joliet City Council at large. I happen to have with me this time Mr. Cesar Guerrero. We're going to talk with Cesar and find out his platform, what he believes in, and what he's going to do for the city of Joliet. Hi Cesar, how are you?
I'm good, thank you for having me.
Okay, and thank you for doing the interview with me today. So let's start off, Cesar, let my listening audience know, who are you?
So again, my name is Cesar Guerrero. I'm a native of Joliet, spent my entire life here. Born and raised on the east side of Joliet, and went through the Joliet school system, and just excited to be a part of the change, to make the city of Joliet a better place.
Okay, and so, you know, my format of who, what, when, where, and why, what are you doing?
So I'll be running for Joliet City Council in the upcoming April 6th municipal election, going for one of 3 seats for the citywide spot. And that's brought us to do quite a lot of canvassing, a lot of walking.
Right.
You know, as I said, I grew up on the east side, so started there with my neighbors, but we've been as far as Kendall County. So
all right.
Everything in between.
What motivated you to run for this position?
Sure. So I've always had an inclination to be a little bit politically minded. I remember as far back as middle school, my peers would say, "Hey Cesar, you've got a talent for public speaking. Are you going to go into politics someday?" And I spent a lot of time exploring different options I wanted to be a scientist, I wanted to be an engineer, but I always knew that I wanted to help people and try to make the world a little bit of a better place. And I thought, I don't need to be in politics to do that. But after last summer in particular, I started getting more involved in community organizing, started getting more involved in advocacy work, and something inside of me just woke up, something clicked, and I realized this is what I want to do.
Wow, and that's awesome, Okay, so you want to serve people.
Absolutely.
You're in the service industry, and so I'm going to go back to the forum that you were on, and you spoke about the warehouse workers and the pay that they get. I know that nationally we're struggling over raising the minimum wage to $15. I don't think that that's passed yet.
Not yet.
But talk about you, and that's one of the passions you have, that you might want to make better deals with these companies coming in so that people can make a livable wages. So talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So, and that's born out of my own experience, having worked in the warehouses myself. I worked at a plant that was so large that it was both the manufacturing and the warehouse all on site. It was actually, I won't say the name here, but actually a Fortune 500 company. We were doing international business in the automotive industry, and most of us were hired through staffing agencies. We were getting paid maybe $12 an hour for what was, honest work. It deserved honest pay. And again, being hired on as temporary workers, we weren't getting, the right overtime pay, the right holidays as everybody else was.
Insurance?
None of that. And insurance definitely would have been something nice to have. I still have my ears still ring a little bit just from the constant roar of machinery going on.
Wow. Okay. So and a safe working environment.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And so what in your first 100 days, when you obtain that seat of city council at large, what out of many things, what's the one thing that you would like to try to get done?
I think what has been my number one priority and what has really resonated with almost every resident that I've spoken to is this issue of water affordability. So as many of the residents of the city of Joliet should be aware by now, many of them still are not. The city has voted to connect to Lake Michigan, to connect to Chicago's water infrastructure, and that comes with a price tag of $500 million. It's definitely not an easy amount to pay off, and I just felt that the decision-making process behind that was a bit rushed. There wasn't enough done to anticipate the cost that it would come to the resident. And so my top priority now has become implementing a tiered pricing structure to be able to protect our most vulnerable residents. people who are working at a low income, people who are on a fixed income, right? Anybody who's retired, anybody who's making or who's living from Social Security benefits, having an increase in something so basic, so essential as water, to triple in cost is going to, really put the hurt on people who are already hurting.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you think with us tapping in or coming into Chicago, so do I hear you say that they should have reached out and got more contracts so that we can have more options before we went there, or?
Well, I mean, there were a number of options that were on the table,
right.
and eventually it was worked down to determining that Lake Michigan was our best option.
Okay.
I know some people still would have liked to see the Kankakee River option be explored a little bit more, but at this point, I think we're at a critical moment where it's a little too late to go back. We shouldn't be taking any steps backward. This is the decision that we've made, and we're going to move forward with it.
Okay.
But moving forward, we need to make sure that we do have that community engagement, that we are reaching out to people, and if we're, say, making the effort to reach the people, and we realize that, hey, this isn't getting the amount of engagement that we want, we should, we need to be innovative, and we need to be proactive with our outreach strategies.
The infrastructure, the traffic, and all those wonderful things that we have going on here in the city of Joliet. I'm all for progress. I have no problem with progress, but every progress has its regress, and unfortunately, it's tearing up our streets. So, give me your take on that.
I think you don't have to look very far from. I mean, on my daily commute, I drive through Collins Street, and it's sort of the main street in the community that I grew up in. And it feels like no matter what time of day I leave, no matter what time of day you drive past, there's always heavy truck traffic. And it wasn't like this when I was a child, not that I remember. And it definitely seems to have picked up in recent years. And again, economic progress is important, absolutely. But it shouldn't come at the expense of our residents.
So what would be your solution to that?
I think we definitely need to implement restrictions on how and where heavy truck traffic can travel through the city. I think, commuters have a hard enough time already going through downtown Joliet. It's one ways on every block. There seems to be construction happening all the time. You factor in, these massive trucks that can barely make a left turn.
You're right.
They should be redirected a different way.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the platform that you were on this past weekend, and some of the questions last week, and some of the questions that were thrown out there at you. You didn't have enough time to expound on them, and that's the one thing about those 3-minute forums. So I'm giving you that opportunity to expound on some of the things that you really wanted to get out and you didn't have enough time to do it.
Sure. So again, I would move back to this issue of water, which is our top priority. People have asked me, well, somebody's got to pay for it, right? And of course, somebody has to pay for it. And I also recognize that, yes, the cost of water is going to increase, just as everything does. But it shouldn't exceed the rate of inflation. It shouldn't be increasing at a faster rate than our groceries and our utilities, than gas prices. We're going to hit, at this rate, we will see a day when a gallon of water is more expensive than a gallon of milk.
You're right. You're absolutely right. So you think they should put a cap on it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the very first step is implementing a cap on how much we should be charging the residents for water. I think it's also important to recognize that even what we saw in this last year with the difficulties that COVID-19 brought us, and we saw many people struggling to be able to pay for their utilities. When you cut off people's access to basic utilities, you're only making the situation worse. And you're making it that much more difficult for them to be able to recover from a very difficult time. So I think if necessary, we should implement a moratorium on utility shutoffs, right? Because if somebody's struggling to pay for their water bill and then you cut off their water, you're only aggravating the situation and making it that much more difficult for them to recover from a very difficult time.
Absolutely. I think that's a good idea. So let's talk a little bit about the bridges. We know that we have A situation with Jefferson Street Bridge, you know, and it's been several times since this happened. So give me your take on what you think, although that came up in the forum, what you think should be done.
I think there were some good responses at the forum, and just being, again, more proactive in our relationship with the state, with the Department of Transportation. Although sometimes it feels like this is sort of a shifting responsibility, right? Well, the city will say it's the state's job. The state will say, well, it's in the city. And I think it's just very important to be clear about where exactly our responsibilities lie.
Right.
Because I got very similar response with, before I ever decided to run for office, I had an interest in revitalizing South Chicago Street. And when I started investigating the project, I was kind of sent in circles and told, well, this particular piece belongs to the city, but this piece is managed by the state. And so there's oftentimes a lot of confusion with these kind of overlapping responsibilities for our roads. So we need to just, again, be clear, be proactive with our relationship with the state, with the Department of Transportation. And it can also be tied back to one of my solutions for addressing the water infrastructure problem, is that President Biden in his first day of office announced that there would be billions of dollars awarded for infrastructure projects across the country. And so we as a city need to be proactive in really reaching out and securing those funds. Because again, you know, the city of Joliet is 150,000 people.
Yes.
It's not a small city.
No.
and we sit at the intersection of two major interstate highways. Infrastructure here is a very important topic.
Absolutely.
And so again, if this money is out there, we need to be proactive in securing and making sure it comes back to the city of Joliet.
Absolutely. So would your idea be to formulate a task force to just strictly go for these fundings, or?
Yeah, I think if necessary, if we can hire a full-time grant writer, I think the cost of paying one person to be fully dedicated to this project will definitely be offset by the amount of money that they should be able to secure. I know in my line of work, I've done a little bit of grant writing myself, and so I have definitely seen the rewards from having something dedicated to this.
Right.
So I think it's absolutely worthwhile to have at least one person or even a team of people fully dedicated full-time to just the acquisition and securing federal funds to be able to revitalize some of these projects in our city that we know have been neglected for far too long now.
Far too long, and that's awesome. Well, once again, Cesar, is there anything else that you want my listening audience to know that we have not covered?
I would say just equity and representation, because
Yes.
you know the city of Joliet is at least 30%, by conservative estimates, 30% Latino. I would say it's probably higher. I worked on the census myself, and I know, you know, some parts of the city are difficult to count.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it's troubling, beyond troubling, to see that there is no representation in the city government, and that was one of the motivators in me deciding to run for office.
That's what I was going to say. Is that a motivating factor that
Absolutely.
you decide that you want to run for office? So look into my camera, Cesar, and tell the citizens of Joliet. First of all, before you do that, what is your platform?
To be very quick, the top priorities for me again are ensuring safe and most importantly affordable drinking water for the residents of the city of Joliet. We want to have equity and representation, again, making sure that we're representing not only the Latino community, but every community in the city of Joliet, and ensuring that every neighborhood is involved in our local democracy. It's important to be more proactive in outreach to neighborhoods that have historically low turnout, that haven't had that sense of civic engagement, and making sure that they're brought to the table and have their voices heard. I've worked on aspects of police reform, which I know can be a sensitive issue, but I want to make it very clear that I'm not calling for abolishing the police in any way.
Absolutely.
I'm not even calling for defunding the police.
Yes.
There are simple policy changes that can be made that would have vast improvements, and I've discussed this with other people, and we've discussed this on some of our virtual town halls. Again, simple changes in policy that are really just common sense solutions that should have been in place already. In addition to that, again, infrastructure is a top priority, as always with local elections, because what people want to see is what they can actually see.
Yes.
You know, policies and what happens in boardrooms, that's all great, but what really matters to people is knowing that they can drive to work and not worry about massive potholes, that they can feel safe driving to and from work, feel safe driving to pick up their children, going to school.
So in other words, they want to see their tax dollars at work, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so it has been wonderful interviewing with you, and I thank you once again for coming on Be Informed with Julie Alexander. Look into the camera and tell those citizens out there, Cesar, to vote for you.
If you've been listening to everything we've had to say so far, and all of this sounds good with you, we'd love to be able to count on your support for April 6th. If you believe that it's possible to have a better city of Joliet, and you want to be a part of that change, we invite you to be part of this campaign. You can also check out the website, electcesarguerrero.com, to learn a little bit more about the platform, learn a little bit more about how you can get involved. I really believe that this is the dawn of a new day for the city of Joliet. I really believe that this is an opportunity to prove that it's possible to do things a different way, that we don't have to follow business as usual, that it's possible for new people, for young people to get involved into politics and to build a better city for all of us. So thank you everyone for listening. Thank you everyone who has already supported us. And again, we'd love to have your support on April 6th.
And hi, I'm Julia Alexander, and as I stated, we are interviewing a series of candidates that's running for Joliet City Council at large. I happen to have with me this time Mr. Cesar Guerrero. We're going to talk to Cesar and find out his platform, what